have to start with game number 5 between the two number 1 seeds. Well, let's start with the Eastern Conference first. Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers. So the Miami Heat absolutely annihilated the 76ers last night, 120 to 85. And for all fans of sports and all NBA fans, we can attest to one thing. Intrinsically, there are certain teams, there are certain players that you just kind of gravitate more towards. There's certain guys that are more likable, others that you root for a little bit harder, other guys that you just kind of dislike, teams that just don't kind of entice your appetite a little bit. You're not really that interested in them. They do something to just disappoint you. And the Philadelphia 76ers are one of these teams. They're one of the most infuriating teams because there's so many elements of this team that I am enamored with. And there's so many aspects of the way that this team plays, the way that this team carries itself that I just loathe and despise. And obviously, there are guys that are very likable, other guys that are less likable. Steph Curry, Giannis, these guys are very likable people. You listen to them talk, and you just can't hide the affinity that we have for them. You hear the affinity that they have for the sport. And then come the Philadelphia 76ers, who 1 minute they play at home and they look like world beaters. And for whatever reason in this particular series, all 3 road games, they have appeared ill prepared. They have come out with a lack of competitive spirit, a lack of competitive fervor, a lack of intensity, a lack of urgency that's required. And it is surprising to me how much apathy and how much lethargy they played with in game 5, a game 5 of the playoffs. It's one thing to come out a little bit lethargic in a regular season basketball game, but game 5 of the NBA playoffs, game 5 of the second round to go up 3-2 in an NBA playoff series, and you're lacking juice. You're not coming out motivated. You're not coming out fired up and ready to play. It's just extremely disappointing. It was extremely disappointing, extremely underwhelming. And I've said this before about the Philadelphia 76ers. I absolutely love Joel Embiid. And obviously, he was disappointed that he didn't win the NBA MVP award. That is very apparent. That was noticeable. And I think that Tobias Harris is a good dude. Danny Green is a consummate professional. Maxey is an up-and-coming star in this game. And I actually don't heap as much blame on Doc Rivers as most, because he probably thought, did Doc Rivers, that he delivered an uplifting speech before the game. He probably believed, along with his coaching staff, that his team understood the magnitude of the moment, that they would come out sharp, that they would come out ready to play and focused from opening tip. I don't think he was even expecting this type of lackluster performance. He said in his postgame remarks, I'd likely want to burn the tape. And for whatever reason, this particular group just continues to underwhelm across the board, but especially in road games. And they need to be a little bit more accountable for their own play. Miami obviously shot it a lot better than the 76ers did. That's to be expected. Them playing at home, they shot a lot better. They shot it a lot more efficiently. Though that's no question about it. And listen, they deserve a lot of credit for the defense that they played. They held Philadelphia to 85 points, which is the lowest mark that they've had in the postseason, this postseason. But even with that being said, Philadelphia's attitude and their mindset, their mentality and approach to the game needs to shift when they're on the road. They just kind of packed it in. They forgot to pack their energy and their intensity in their suitcases when they took off the runway to fly from Philly over to Miami. They just left it at home. And I've been hearing a lot of criticism of Joel Embiid. I'm going to give him this pass for a few reasons. The guy is dealing with a litany of injuries. He's dealing with an orbital fracture in his right eye, dealing with a torn ligament in his right shooting hand. And so I'm not expecting Joel Embiid to necessarily be quite as dominant as he was pre injury. I think that's an unfair assumption or expectation. But with that being said, Joel Embiid is the heartbeat of the team. And he's got to set the tone with his energy and with his intensity, with his aggressiveness. He only put up 12 shots. Now, I know he probably can only see out of 1.5 eyes, but still, that trickles down to the rest of the guys on the team. And they see that he's not as engaged as he needs to be. He's not as active as he needs to be. Well, then why should we? Unfortunately, that's been the reality. Miami understood, hey, this is a pivotal game 5. The winner of game 5 in a 2-2 series ends up winning about 80 to 82% of the time, the rest of the series. So they played out with a sense of urgency. They came out with a sense of urgency. Philly, they just kind of played with the thought that they've got game 6 in their back pocket. So Joel Embiid, I think obviously he had heard earlier in the day or yesterday. Yeah, yesterday, because that's when the game was played earlier in the day. He had heard that Nikola Jokic won back-to-back MVP awards over him, the second consecutive year in which he finished second. So clearly he was disappointed. And he appeared a little bit dejected, completely deflated. He was distracted by losing out on the award, is what it looked like to all the viewers. And unfortunately, that's not the tone that you need to set for your team. But again, as far as the actual production, I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass. He needs to be more aggressive, that's for sure. But his efficiency, whatever, he was 7 for 12, so he was efficient, just didn't shoot enough. James Harden reverted back to the same James Harden and the version of the beer that we had seen all throughout the last year and a half, unfortunately. He just can't sustain any level of consistency anymore, unfortunately. I think that's the reality. Tyrese Maxey just had an off shooting night. Tobias Harris got up 14 shots. That's fine. So he was aggressive. He was getting up some shots. And the rest of the team just didn't really shoot it particularly well. But this game was all about heart. It was all about desire. It was all about want to win and a will to compete. Miami won this purely on effort. Yes, they shot it better than Philly, but this was a game of effort, and Philly didn't bring it. I mean, even the 2 games in Philadelphia that the 76ers won, Miami was competing. They were in it till the end. Game 3 was a little bit more one-sided, but they were still battling. Just because they were missing shots and losing, they were still competing. They were still battling, especially game 4. And yet, to me, it was just extremely disappointing. Now, do I see Philadelphia coming back home to win a game 6 on their home floor? Yes. Do they have a chance to win game 7 on the road? They do, but so far the blueprint on them has been, hey, at least in this series, is if you're Miami, if we just try to punch them in the mouth within the first 5-10 minutes of the first quarter, they'll back off. And that's what's been the trend so far. I mean, every single game in Miami, Philadelphia hasn't struck any potential fear whatsoever that they could go into that building and win. And that's a problem. That's a major problem.